Every writer knows that the best conversations about writing don't happen in classrooms or symposia or any fancy artisanal setting. They happen at the bar, usually after deadline. That's the vibe we're going for here. This is The Other 51, conversations with writers of all genres about writing. I'm Brian Moritz. Today's guest is Alysa Auriemma. Alysa Auriemma, welcome back again to The Other 51. Thanks for doing a three-peat here. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is just turning into a backdoor pilot for the podcast we're eventually going to launch at some point, where we just talk about nerd stuff all the time. But
yep.
So this is actually we're starting off 2008 with this podcast at your request, and this came off of some online discussions that were going on Twitter about The Last Jedi. So spoiler warning: if you haven't seen The Last Jedi yet, the new Star Wars movie, and you care about it being spoiled, you should probably come back after you've seen it. Although if you care about it being spoiled, you probably would have seen it by now.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about spoiler culture at all in a little bit after we get to the meat of the topic here. But first of all, so what did you think of Last Jedi?
I liked it. I think it was as well paced as The Force Awakens? Not really. I think there were a couple pacing issues, and there were a couple jokes that I didn't really think worked. But other than that, I thought it was fine. I thought it was a really good send-off for Carrie Fisher. I thought she did an amazing job. I loved the character of Rose. I thought it was such a great addition to the cast. I thought that the ideas that it was playing with were really interesting. And I thought Mark Hamill was incredible. Mm-hmm. So I have really no complaints about it. But like I said on Twitter, which kind of sparked this whole thing, halfway through the movie, I turned to my friend Lindsay, who I saw that with, and I saw Rogue One with. I turned to her and I said, "Okay, I know why the fanboys are so upset. Like I completely understand why they're as mad as they are." 20 minutes into the movie, it's that moment when Rey goes up to Luke with his lightsaber, and he takes it and he holds it and he's looking at her. And I just thought to myself, he's going to throw it. Like, he's going to do something. He's going to like completely dismiss it or like do something crazy and unexpected. And he tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder. And I looked over at my friend Lindsay and I said, "Okay, I get why fanboys are upset." I completely, now I know why they're so upset, because I really avoided all spoilers before I went in. And but I kind of had a sense that it was going to be a little bit, and I'd seen some reviews about how it kind of blows up the Star Wars universe a little bit. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw it and I was like, oh, okay. Now I see what they're getting into such a lather about.
It's funny because I avoided all spoilers, and I avoided anything about it before I went to see it. Like anybody who I did my best to not know anything about even like the reaction to it. I wanted to go in as cold as possible, and so I didn't know any of the fanboys were upset or there was this kind of backlash against it until we were driving home from the movie, and I loved it. I thought it was really great. It's funny, I didn't have the great, like when I saw Force Awakens, I was just giddy that whole movie, and it was like they made it fun, and I remember leaving the theater just feeling overjoyed, and I didn't have that same reaction after Last Jedi, but I really liked the movie. Yes, it's not perfect. It's too long. It kind of drags a little bit in the middle, but I really, really enjoyed it. And then I was reading the reviews of it and the stories about the backlash, which is interesting. That I feel like there's more coverage of the backlash than actual backlash.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the whole handling of Luke's story, and like I found it funny because in the vacuum as I saw it, as I was watching it, like the story felt completely organic to me. Like it felt absolutely this is exactly what should be happening. So it was really interesting for me to see that reaction after the fact and kind of piece it together. But you knew right away that that's what they were gonna be kind of pissy about.
Yeah, it was I had seen a little bit of backlash. I had seen a little bit of coverage of the backlash before I went in, and I was watching it going, oh, I I know why I know why they're upset. It's the same thing like when they did a gender swap Ghostbusters. And everybody was saying, oh, they like people were saying like my childhood is destroyed. Like people were so viscerally upset. And I think that the reason why is because they think that a part of their childhood has been taken away from them because their childhood heroes have been shown to be flawed and to be really complicated and to have some doubts about whether or not they're doing the right thing because they've gotten older and they've experienced the world and all these kind of things. So I was sitting there as somebody who's really interested in that kind of stuff, really appreciative of how Rian Johnson was just like, oh, what if Luke was really jaded and really torn up about his role as a Jedi and didn't really want to train Rey when the whole when the whole thing for the 2 years leading up to the Last Jedi, everybody was like, oh, Luke is going to be training Rey and it's going to be this big like narrative of him like helping her discover her role as a Jedi and all this kind of stuff. So within the first 5 minutes to have Luke say to her, like, I'm not training you, was I loved that. I thought I was cackling in the theater because I knew like this, like, oh, everyone's going to be furious about this. But as somebody who, and I must, qualify this statement by saying I'm more of a newcomer to Star Wars than, someone who saw it when they were a little kid. I saw all the prequels in the theaters. I've seen the original movies, but I didn't see the original movies until in their entirety until a couple of years ago. I'd seen like bits and pieces of them, so I'd seen like the whole movie, like all the movies, but never like sat down and watched it from beginning to end. So it was never really my fandom, really. And it still kind of isn't my fandom. I appreciate it and I like it. But I'm more of a Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter person. So that's like my jam, really.
Okay.
But I get why people love Star Wars so much. And it's because of that, like, narrative of like this boy finds out about this life and he goes out into the world and it's the hero's journey and he redeems his father and all that kind of great epic stuff. And what Rian Johnson did was basically say, yeah, but what if Luke were human and
right.
What if he had serious doubts about the role of the Jedi? It's like it's almost like he had a crisis of religion, and I thought that was so interesting. And then he redeems himself in a huge way at the end. So,
right.
When he that whole bit at the end when he's fighting Ben and Kylo, I was just like, this is earned. Like, this is really, really earned. Because, and I mean, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but when I saw the Return of the Jedi for the first time, and Luke shows up and he's in all black and he's just like destroying everything, and he's not like he's got this greater understanding of the Force. I was with somebody and I looked at them and I was like, when did all this happen? Like, when did he become this person? And they said, well, in between the second movie and the third movie, he was doing more training and he had a greater understanding of the Force. And I was like, but where's that movie? Like, I don't understand where is that movie? And
right.
I know that there's Clone Wars. I know that there's like, not Clone Wars, but, in between like canon stuff that's been written about that period. But I've always wanted to know what that actual journey was. He kind of goes from point A to point Z and we never see anything in the middle.
Right.
So I loved in The Last Jedi that you finally got a sense of his, like, how complicated his life is. And I thought the ending was really quiet for how much happens in the end of that movie. And I thought that was really interesting. But as I left, I was like, oh, God. I have friends who are probably furious about this movie.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like, you know, I am a 40-year-old white dude, so Star Wars is my wheelhouse. And I saw Jedi in the theater. Like, I was Luke Skywalker that year for Halloween when I was like in first grade. So like, I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
But I watched this movie and it was like I didn't have the same reaction that I think a lot of guys my age, or not a lot, a number of guys my age had when watching it, and I agree with you. Like the whole journey, Luke's kind of crisis of faith and his, you know, casting aside the Jedi. I don't know, that completely felt natural to me. It didn't feel like it was, you know, this retelling of Star Wars. Like it felt knowing how Luke, you know, he was reluctantly swept up into being a Jedi, found out, you know, his dad is Darth Vader, and then all this stuff happens, and it totally struck me as within character that he would kind of walk away at the end. And you're right about the ending of the movie and how it's earned. And if you get to that last shot where he's got the two sons, and it's the callback to the moment in the original movie when he's before he finds out anything, when he's just on the wind farm, and he looks up and it's the iconic shot with the two or three sons, and the music swells, and the music's a direct callback to that moment. I mean, you're right. You have to earn that moment, and that really, really did. It was very funny too when you were talking. You mentioned the gap between Empire and Jedi, and how Luke becomes all of a sudden this kind of master Jedi thing, and yet you will always hear the criticism of Rey as being she picked this stuff up too quickly. And I did call up your original tweet that we can leapfrog here is, can I come back on the other 51 and talk about how nerd boys crying about diversity is my favorite thing?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, you know, in all the talk about Luke and his character, there I don't know if I haven't read as much or as widely as probably you have on it. Has there been a lot? I know there's been conversations about Rose as a character, and I agree with you. She's awesome. But has there been that much talk about, as much talk about diversity in this universe and in this movie as there was after Force Awakens, when it was very much a, how can a girl be a Jedi? Which was the actual reaction from a lot of people.
I think it's that I think it was like almost continuing. It was a conversation that had started with Force Awakens and then kind of flared up again during Last Jedi. Okay. It was like, oh, remember that Rey is like a Mary Sue. Like, remember how we thought that Rey was a Mary Sue. And I read this article, and I can't remember where I found it, but it was this article about how, or a Twitter feed or something, like a Twitter thread, that basically talked about how The Last Jedi showed that the Force is for everyone. Mm-hmm. And it's not this, like, clandestine, secretive thing that only a few people are allowed to have. Mm-hmm. Like, anybody can be Force sensitive. It's just a matter of, like, tuning into it. And that's why one of my favorite moments in the whole thing is Leia being out in space, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like, she suddenly flies back into the ship. And I was sitting there like, this is so ridiculous, but it's kind of awesome. Because it was like, of course Leia would be Force sensitive. She's Anakin Skywalker's daughter. Like,
right.
Of course she's Force sensitive. And they've never really, I mean, they've kind of played with it a little. But that's the first time where you're like, well, of course she's Force sensitive.
Right.
Like, that makes complete sense canonically. But you have all these people being like, oh, well, that was stupid. And it's like, oh, is it stupid because it wasn't, because Luke had done it. Luke was like balancing on his hand for like half of Empire Strikes Back. like, come on.
I think the execution of it was a little weird, the way they visually pulled it off and the way they did it, but I didn't have a problem with it, like, thematically. And if nothing else, like, you let Carrie Fisher have that moment because she's Carrie Fisher. So.
Oh, so good.
But it is interesting to think about. I did love that moment. And one of the other big criticisms I've seen of the story in Last Jedi is Rey's parents. And there was always this, after Force Awakens, it was this, Is she a Kenobi? Is she a Skywalker? Kind of what's her royal ancestry in the Jedi cult? And then to have that moment comes up with, you know who your parents are? They were nobodies. Like they were just, drunks on Jakku who left her. And like it was funny. I did read a lot of interesting thing. I think our mutual friend Carly Lane wrote a great piece about fan theories and how how this movie kind of, one of the reasons there was such a visceral reaction in some quarters of fandom was that there's this kind of almost cottage industry of fan theories about what was happening, and then you find out that Ryan Johnson's completely uninterested in your fan theories. Like he's just and I thought that was really really interesting moment and really really interesting take on it.
Yes, I love that because Ryan Johnson is clearly a fan of the universe. I mean, he wouldn't have taken this job if he wasn't a fan of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And he's said that multiple times, that he's a huge fan and has always been, really devoted to this fandom and wanted to make the best Star Wars movie that he could. But that being said, he made his Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. And I kind of love that he went into this universe, saw everything that was there and was like, what's the opposite of what the fans are expecting me to do?
Right.
And but it makes sense. So there was all of this hubbub about like, ooh, who raised parents? Luke is probably Rey's dad. That was a big thing, right? And so to have Ben say to her, they were drunks from Jakku who sold you and forgot about you because they needed money. Mm-hmm. I was just like, of course that's what happened.
All right, so we were talking about your hatred of Kylo Ren.
Yes.
And I do find the Kylo Ren as a character interesting because I feel like part of the love of him is, everyone loves the villain and everyone loves the bad guy. Yeah. And it's a really, Adam Driver's performance of it is outstanding. It's really good. It's a really great performance, I think. But I think again, when you talk about the setting up and playing off of the tropes of Star Wars, I think we're all waiting. We, collective audience, are waiting for he's gonna be redeemed like Darth Vader was redeemed at the end of Return of the Jedi. Right. And I don't know if I see that in him. Like he seems like a lot more. I don't know. He seems like very obviously absolutely related, but also seems a lot more vindictive, I think, than vindictive, vicious. He just seems like I don't know, maybe like a more modern bad guy in a way. I don't know. I'm not explaining this right, but he does. I feel like it's that push and pull we've been talking about, those expectations we have of what this movie is going to be versus what it turns into. So is it just the bad? So what else is it about Kylo Ren that you see the fan community, a portion of the fan community loving that you just despise?
I think it's also because of the idea that there's such a darkness to Kylo, and it's almost he redeems himself a little bit in Last Jedi, but then he immediately goes back to square one. Right. And that makes me want to just kind of jump up and go this person is not capable of being saved. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's really nihilist of me to say, but I feel like that's really smart of Ryan Johnson to do, where he's going there are people whose minds you're not going to be able to change. There are people who are just bad. Mm-hmm. And you can't really do anything with that. And Rey kind of has that realization at the end. And I love that moment where she closes off the mind connection with Ben, mm-hmm. Where she's like, I'm done. And I loved that moment because it was this, no, I am not doing this anymore. Because she does have that moment where she's like, I can help you. And they hold hands and right. And that moment, I do like that moment, but I love that it turns everything on its head, and Rey realizes oh, I can't save this person. Right. And the people that I can save, I'm going to save. So she saves, Poe and Finn and Rose and all of these people. And that's what that's what she needs to do. And that's kind of what she learns from Luke too. And I also find him to be just really manipulative. And also he's just such a whiner, and he's just like he's a very compelling character. I will say that. I felt very I felt very compelled to watch Adam Driver when he was on screen, and I thought Adam Driver gave a great performance. But there's this weird psychosexual fascination that people have with Kylo Ren and with Hux in a weird way. Like that's a huge shipping. Like people ship that couple a lot.
Ew.
Yeah, ew. I know. But it's a very popular like. I look up like trends and stuff in like fandom and like especially like with fan fiction and fan art and stuff like that. And after The Force Awakens, Hux and Kylo was like a really big couple that people shipped. And then after I watched The Last Jedi, when like Kylo, Snoke is just beating the living crap out of Hux every like possible opportunity, and Hux is just like this sniveling character. And I thought that he was funny. I thought that like his character was really funny because he just wanted to do a good job and just kept getting foiled at every turn. I thought it was a really interesting metaphor for like aging fanboys. And, but also just like with everything that's going on in our country with like the alt-right and like these young men that are basically Nazis, but they're being described as being very dapper and well dressed and well spoken, and everybody kind of is going like, yeah, but they're literally wanting to kill everyone. Like,
right.
So it's this. So I was watching the movie going like, this is really interesting because it's just showing how like pathetic those people are, because every moment that Hux thinks he's got something up on the resistance, they completely embarrass him.
Right.
And he's always one of the bigger laugh lines in the movie is like when it cuts to Hux and he just looks so angry, but he's like trying to keep it tamped down. And I just kept saying to my friend while we were watching, I was like, oh my God, Hux is such a whiny little brat. But I kind of loved it. And I loved how diverse and interesting the resistance was. And it just was, the metaphors were very strong. And I really appreciated that.
It's going to be weird when I see this movie again when I realize that the guy who plays Hux is the guy who plays Bill Weasley in the last two Harry Potter movies.
I know.
We just watched those this weekend. My daughter and we just finished reading the Harry Potter series so we could watch the last two movies, and that's when Bill comes in, and oh my, and my wife points out, she's like, when Bill's on screen, she's like, Bill Weasley, like, yeah, like Hux from Star Wars. No, had to Google that to make sure I was right. Oh my God, that's not right. But so I wanted to ask. It's kind of this is going to be a big question. So you can break it down however you want. But we mentioned diversity earlier, and you study this, you read about it, you write about it, you teach it. In general, it's a question, but especially when we get into fandom and we get into things like Star Wars, not so much Harry Potter, but a little bit, and like especially kind of like science fiction and comic book fandom. Why, for a segment of the population, is diversity such a hard thing to handle? Do you think?
That's a really good question, and it's actually something that I've talked about with my students this semester. I did a unit on well, one of my units, I introduced it we watched the movie Thor. We watched the MCU version of Thor. And then we read Thor, Goddess of Thunder. And we talk about it. And then what I do is I have them read articles about Kamala Khan, who is Ms. Marvel, and she's a Muslim American superhero. Mm-hmm. And I also have them read articles on Miles Morales, who is, the Black Spider-Man. And I also have them read articles on race bending and gender bending in film, and which happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And I talk to them and I'm like, well, what, like, and I also have them look up comments from like the internet, like negative comments about why people are mad about these changes. And I think the consensus that we came to, the consensus that I have, is that the main point of view, or like the picture that we have in our heads when we're thinking of like classic characters, the default that we have is white, because we have this very strong history of whitewashing most things, whether it's fairy tales or folk tales or just kind of stories in general. These tropes are always seen as white. And when they're seen as black or dark, it's usually seen as something negative. I have a colleague friend, Ebony Elizabeth Thomas, who's coming out with a book called The Dark Fantastic. And it's all about this idea about why is it that dark is associated with evil and all that kind of stuff. And, even in like Lord of the Rings, which is one of my favorite books ever, and those are my favorite movies of all time. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is my favorite movies of all time. The evil people are always black. Like they're just like either like, the Black Gate or the Southrons are always like very like kind of tribal looking in nature. Like evil is always seen as this multicolored thing. And now you have all of these narratives where people are kind of all over the place, and like they don't have to be straight or white or, identifying as one gender or whatever it is. And I'm always reminded of that one quote that you see a lot, where it's like, when you've never dealt with being oppressed your whole life, like equality can feel like oppression, where it's like, oh, I've never had to deal with this. Mm-hmm. And when there's this huge outpouring of diversity that comes out, the response is, I don't like this because I'm not familiar with it, or I'm not used to this. And my narratives have always been seen through this very white male lens. And, an example of that would be, the original Star Wars movies. I love, and obviously Lando Calrissian is a huge, big exception to that. I love that character a lot. But it's about like the hero's journey, and that hero's journey is very white. Mm-hmm. So to have this movie that comes out that basically says the heroes in this are a stormtrooper that defected who is black, a Latino pilot, an Asian young woman, and trying to honor the death of her sister, which is also like a big hero's journey too. Like mm-hmm. That's a huge trope. Like someone's sibling or someone dies, and you have to kind of keep going and honor their memory in some way. And Rey, who never knew her parents. These are all really old tropes in storytelling. And why are people getting mad about it now? Because it's not the faces that we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because I was watching, when I saw Last Jedi, the trailer for Infinity War was before it. Mm-hmm. And when I first saw that trailer, first of all, I like lost my mind.
Because it's going to be awesome.
Oh my God. I'm like, I'm so excited, but I'm so terrified because I don't want any of my people. I know they're going to kill someone, and I'm just going to be really upset no matter who it is. But I was watching that trailer, and the centering of Wakanda in that trailer is so incredible to me, because the big battle at the end is, Steve, Bucky, Nat, and everybody else. But then like T'Challa and, Rhodey and everyone. But with like thousands of Wakandans behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this centering of this very diverse narrative in this huge superhero movie. And the best thing was when I saw a an article on Entertainment Magazine after that trailer came out, and the title was something like in the Infinity War trailer, Wakanda saves the day. And I was like, yes, like that is brilliant. And the excitement that people are having for that and for Black Panther, it's just so interesting and great to me.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, I think it's this feeling of like, oh, we used to be, we never had to like think about this stuff before.
Right.
I think.
And
yeah.
I think part of it too, and I will speak as a 40-year-old white dude, stipulating I agree with everything you have said. But I think
right.
there's a part of, especially like Star Wars fandom and a lot of comic book fandom, that's like, for the longest time, it was not cool to be into comics or into Star Wars, and so it created a very insular community. That community was very white, very male. And, like, this was our thing. And, like, this was our world. This was the thing we loved. And you guys make fun of us for it, but this is our thing that we love. And,
right.
And now, all of a sudden, it's cool. It's popular. It's trendy. But also now, they're bringing girls in. Now a girl gets to be the hero. This is not the thing. And I always kind of come back to this idea, and this is a cliche dad thing to say, so I apologize that it's a cliche dad thing to say, but like my daughter, she's 7, and she came home from school before Christmas break and said that she was playing with one of her friends. They were playing Star Wars at recess, and she was Rey and her friend was Rose. And I'm like, so let's maybe think that that the movies that are being made aren't for me anymore. And that's okay. I can watch Empire Strikes Back literally any moment that I want to and kind of recapture that. But, maybe this is, maybe it's good. It's always just good to think that this is Star Wars for our kids and a younger generation or a new group. This isn't, Star Wars isn't just a property of, 40-something-year-old white dudes. And that's good. That makes the movies are better, I think, because of that.
Right. Yeah. And, it's like the same sort of thing happened when I saw Wonder Woman. And what's funny is that when I first saw Wonder Woman in theaters, I don't know why, but I didn't have as visceral a reaction to it. Maybe because I was just kind of overwhelmed by like, the hype of it. And I just was like, and I saw it with some friends. So I think when I see movies with friends, I don't get as like, I can't allow myself to get as sucked in to movies because I'm like always nervous. Like I'm like, oh, people are going to make fun of me for like crying or whatever. But I got the movie later and I watched it and I cried at the scene in No Man's Land. I cried so much because it was this woman who was like, screw you. I'm going to save these people because that's what I came here to do. And you're not going to tell me not to do this. And the fact that there's this one woman who's just taking all of these bullets so these men can go ahead and do what they need to do and takes down this whole room of people by herself. And just that moment of her like getting up and walking towards the bullets and just deflecting them. And that one of my favorite moments in that whole scene is when she blocks the second bullet with her gauntlet, and then she just looks up and she just got this look on her face like, well, that worked. And she kind of breathes, she kind of inhales and exhales, and she just gets this look on her face like, okay, here we go. And I was sitting there just like, oh my God. And then you see all these videos of, Gal Gadot hugging these little girls dressed up as Wonder Woman, and you're just like, oh, like it's so wonderful. I've been waiting for that movie to be made for 12 years. Like I have wanted that movie to be made for so long, but I also was like, I don't want them to make it until they make it completely right. And so I was okay with waiting. And I'm so glad and also I'm so glad that a gay man wrote that script, because he had just more of an innate sense of how to write this character than, for example, Joss Whedon. And I whose leaked script, I read parts of it and I was horrified. So I'm just glad that I'm glad that Patty Jenkins directed it. And so the more diverse the more diverse we get people behind the camera to like have these stories told, the more interesting the stories are going to be and the better they're going to be. Like Wonder Woman, Beauty and the Beast, and Last Jedi were the top 3 grossing movies this year. Like last year, I believe. So that tells you something. And it's, that those things make money. And so the fact that like people are kind of like, oh, well, like we need to do this certain thing, or this movie won't get made because it's not going to make money. It's like, no, it's going to make buckets of money. And that's why the first thing I said after the Wonder Woman movie came out was I like tweeted out, I was like, so Kevin Feige, where's our Black Widow movie? Like,
yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know how many movies she has left on her contract. I mean, if they do make one, I don't know if it's going to be with Scarlett Johansson, but I would love I want one. I mean, I also want a lot of other movies that I know aren't going to get made. But like, I want a Winter Soldier movie. I want a Thunderbolts movie. There's just so many things that I want that I'm not going to get. But that would be just such an easy, like, money in the bank opportunity for Marvel. Like, I don't understand. So I feel like, I feel like it's just such a, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But then again, I'm a person that reads and looks at this stuff for a living. So I think I just have more of a sense of how things work than other people. But you're right about the gaming thing, about like people, like the nerd culture, how it's very insulated.
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of agree with that too, because as someone who was a huge nerd and still is a huge nerd myself, it is very insulated. And when people are kind of poking around in it, it can be very, you get very protective of it. However, my point of view is like, oh, you better take care of these characters and not mess with them and not do anything that's non-canon compliant. Whereas I think a lot of other people, their point of view is like, oh, you better not add a girl,
How dare you make Spider-Man be black and Hispanic?
Yes, exactly.
Although I was most stoked about the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse trailer before Force Awakens. That looks super cool, and it's a Miles Morales Spider-Man, the animated one, and it looks super interesting and super cool. And I do love, I think I tweeted at you. We talked about this on the last podcast, but Spider-Man: Homecoming. Oh my God, what a great movie that was! Love it. You were right. They nailed all aspects of Peter Parker. That is just such a fun movie. But
it's so good. I was sitting there just like fist pumping the entire time. It was so good.
But but you're right that the when you have diverse storytellers, you get different stories, and you get more better stories. I think that's what it comes down to. It's not just, oh, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and he was a nerd and an outcast and bitten by a radioactive spider, and he falls in love with MJ, and blah, 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 blah. Now you get a different story on it, and a different take on it, and it's not always the best, but I think that makes it better. And there is something to that representation, to girls seeing themselves as, as the superhero who's in charge. And you want metaphor, that Gal Gadot scene in Wonder Woman, the where she comes over the one you were talking about. Like, you want a metaphor for 2017 and 2018, the one woman coming in to save all the men and to take all the bullets. Yes. Yep, that's about right. So. Yep.
Yeah. And I love that shot of her, like, with the, like, kind of just, like, the bullets are coming towards her shield and she has to kind of kneel down, but she's just, like, pushing against it. And I remember when I first saw the trailer, I was in my parents' backyard, and it was during Comic-Con weekend of 2016 when that first trailer dropped. Mm-hmm. And I remember as the trailer was loading on my phone, I just remember thinking to myself, please don't suck. Please don't suck. Please don't suck. And when the trailer ended, I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't, nobody was home. I didn't have anybody to like yell about it. Like I was just like, I have no one to scream this to. Like, this is just so amazing. And I had a friend that was like, oh, well, yeah, it looks good, but like, you know, the DCU has like, you know, good trailers and the movies aren't that great. And I was like, I don't care. Like, let me have this moment.
Right.
And I was just so thrilled. And the interesting thing about Spider-Man Homecoming too is I was watching it going like, oh my God, they all look like they're in high school. This is amazing.
I know.
Like, they all look like they're 16. Like, this is great. And they all, and it looks like a high school in Queens. Like, and also the fact that like Peter's not really, he's not really, like, being a nerd is cool, but Peter's still kind of made fun of because he's just kind of like awkward.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so much more believable than like, haha, you're a nerd.
Right.
It was more just like, Peter's the awkward kid that doesn't really know how to make friends.
Right.
And makes his own computers at home in his apartment. But like, that's not why they make fun of him. They make fun of him because he's just like uncoordinated and kind of geeky and like doesn't really know how to talk to girls.
Right.
And is on like the what was it, math team or the
debate team? Yeah.
Debate team. So like, he's like that kind of kid. And he's just kind of socially awkward. And I loved that about him. And I loved that his friends were just kind of like nerds too, but like everybody was just super nice. And I just thought it was so sweet. And also the fact that he got made fun of fellow nerds and like,
yes,
fellow nerds made fun of him, which I thought was so much more believable. Right.
He was at, they're at a science and tech high school. So like they're all, this is not like a public school where he's the outcast, like he's like the smart kid. Like they're all nerds at that school. He's just like the geekiest of the nerds or something like that. And he's the most socially inept of the nerds. And can't really like deal with girls. Right. So. I just love that they drop you in the middle of that story. Like it's the origin. It's kind of it's not an origin story because we all know how Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man. It's kind of like the, you know, that like teenage Spider-Man like version of it, which was like he's not fully into his power yet, but you don't have to go through the whole he got bit and now he can shoot things and da 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 da. Like I love, and the pacing is such a good movie. So.
So good. It was so good.
Speaking of good stuff, what's the best thing you've read lately?
Oh, I'm trying to think. The best thing that I read lately, the most recent book that I read was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer.
Okay.
And that is it's going to be made into a movie. It's coming out like in a month or so, and it's like a science fiction sort of story about this group on an expedition into this like kind of sealed off biosphere that has like started to mutate, and but it's a lot like, if you've ever seen the movie The Descent, about those four women that go into the caves and like end up kind of losing their minds. It's kind of like that, where like the stuff that's going on in this biosphere isn't as creepy as what's happening within the group. And it's like, it really, what it does really well is it gives you this sense of paranoia and this feeling of like, you can't trust anybody. And it was really quick read. So yeah, I think that's probably the best thing I read lately. It had a nice pace to it. And, it was really interesting. It's part of a series that he did called the Southern Reach trilogy. And I need to go and read those. But I saw the trailer for the movie and I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. So I was like, oh, I'll just read the book because it's really quick.
Cool. I got this for Christmas. I can recommend. I read Fun Home, the graphic novel that the musical is based off of. And
I love Fun Home.
It is so. We saw the musical in town a few weeks ago and bawled like a baby because it was so beautifully done. And then I got the book and read it in like 3 days. It's a graphic novel memoir, so it's a pretty fast read. sobbed like a baby. So
good.
So beautifully, and the artwork in it, like, it's a beautiful story. She writes beautifully, but the artwork in it is so surprisingly poignant. Like, she's not a very over the top artist. She's kind of very simply detailed, but there are just a couple panels that are just striking in how beautiful they are. It is if you've seen or heard of the musical, the book hews very closely to it. So I can highly recommend that.
I love that book. Yeah, I definitely would recommend that one too.
Awesome. So, well, Alyssa, where can people find your stuff? Yeah.
I am on Twitter at Alysa Auriemma, Alysa Auriemma. And I also, every once in a while, update my blog. One of my resolutions was to get better at updating that damn thing. But it's at thecuriousalleycat.com, alley with 2 L's. I'm also, in the new year, starting to work with this, it's like a progressive journalism site called 50 States of Blue.
Okay.
I'm one of the Connecticut correspondents, along with this other guy who's great. And I kind of I've only have one article so far, but that should probably pick up in the next couple of weeks. And I also write every once in a while for ESPNW. And but other than that, right now I'm just trying to get some outside writing projects done. So Twitter is the main place that you could probably find me.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll have to do this again sometime. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.